the very first time. How many of you have been here for 2 years or more? 5 years? 8 years? Wow. Who was here all the way from the beginning? May 1st, 2010. There are 2 of the 10-year folks who actually I think are not in this room at the moment, Molly Gloss and Barbara Drake. Oh, stand up, ladies, stand up. Barbara's here. These guys were part of the very first festival, helped to make it happen. They both presented 10 years ago, and they're both presenting today, which is pretty cool. As we celebrate our 10-year anniversary, we're also celebrating the republication of 3 of Molly's books. Outside the Gates, which is something about monsters and dystopia. Wildlife, which is something about turn of the 20th century Sasquatch. The Dazzle of Days, which is, get this, Newbergians, Quaker sci-fi. And additionally, Unforeseen, a book of short stories. I believe we have some of those on the bookcase, and this is a great opportunity to celebrate that resurrection of those books that had gone out of print. Barbara has been working, of course, to keep the festival going all these 10 years. Barbara's really talented and gifted and generous and everything, but probably my favorite thing about her is that she addresses those of us on the committee as the terroiristas. Over the years, I've been serving on the committee about 5 years now. I've noticed there are 2 types of people on the Terroir Planning Committee. The first type refers to our mission as the Terroir Writing Festival, while the second type says not terroir, but terroir. Have you ever wondered which is correct? I'm a nonfiction writer, and I've noticed the same pattern among my fellow memoirists. Some say memoir, and some say memoir. And no, I'm not going to tell you which pronunciation I use for either. But I will tell you this. The word terroir, however you pronounce it, is a word we've plucked right out of the vineyards that surround us in Yamhill County. The terroir of the soil differs depending on whether the soil is more volcanic or more soily. I'm not much of a wine person myself. The same variety of grape will have different features in the wine when grown in different kinds of soil. So this festival celebrates the writers who are grown or transplanted to this part of Oregon and the broad variety of literature that comes from our soil. Ursula K. Le Guin, also here that first year, 10 years ago, passed away early in 2018, and those of you who were here last year will remember Barbara Drake opening the festival by reading one of Ursula's poems. As we approached the anniversary, Terroir wanted to do something special to mark the occasion. With a grant from the Yamhill County Cultural Coalition, we commissioned Margot Voorhees-Thompson, a well-known Portland artist, to do the artwork for a limited edition broadside of an Ursula K. Le Guin poem, Slick Rock Creek, September. The work is printed by Newhouse Press of Portland, and the broadsides are for sale at the raffle table. For personal reasons, Margot was unable to be here today and only signed 22 out of the 150 festival broadsides. You'll be able to buy the prints signed, unsigned, or to be signed later and shipped to you. Stop by the raffle table and purchase your piece of Oregon literary history. And wow, that sounded like advertising copy. I do want to thank Monica Setzial-Phillips, who was peering in the door just a minute ago, for her time and talent in working with the commissioned artist and printer to make this broadside happen. And thank you to Karen Huntsberger. Karen crafted the anniversary slideshow you see rolling behind me, and we'll stop that while Kim Stafford is speaking, and you can see it again over lunch. There's a lot of history packed into each slide, and we're very grateful to Karen for these visual memories. If you have your phone and you have not yet set it to silent or vibrate, please do so now. If you would like to tweet, you can find the Twitter hashtag on all of the boards here, and also instructions for getting onto the Wi-Fi. If you have any trouble with the Wi-Fi, a gentleman is out at the table here or outside in the foyer, and he will help you with that. You you've all received a folder, and in your folder is an evaluation form. I'd like you to pull that evaluation form out and put it in front of all the other stuff. So as you go through the day, when you have a little moment's break, you can start to fill that out. Or if an idea comes to you, if you're in a session and you think of another speaker who would be interesting to have, or some topic you would like to see covered in a future festival, please leave us those notes. We really pore over those, we sort through them, and those shape our future festivals. There's also a schedule in the program built in on a landscape orientation here, so you'll be able to sort through the classes you'd like to go to. We are really full today. We're at capacity, as you all know, which means some of the classrooms upstairs, which seat a maximum of 40 people, are going to be at capacity. And the fire marshal says no bodies if there aren't chairs. So if you get upstairs to one of your sessions and you find that there's not a seat available, please check into another session or come down here. There will be sessions running in this room, and of course there's always space. If you do have an accessibility issue, a mobility issue, we would be happy to reserve you a space in one of those upstairs classrooms. Talk either to me or to Keith Evers here at the front to make that happen. You also see the recycling bins on either side of the room. This is the third year that we've had the assistance of Zero Waste, whose goal is to make McMinnville the first Oregon city to sort 90% of our waste and keep it out of landfill by 2024, last I heard. Unfortunately, your coffee cups do not recycle, they don't compost, they will need to go into landfill. Caroline O'Brien, I told her I was going to call her the pink shirt lady today. The pink shirt lady from our local cable access television station will be filming here today. Speakers, she'll be asking permission before recording any parts of your workshop or readings, and guests, she may approach you with the request of a brief interview. So if you're shy, avoid eye contact. And even if you're not shy, just ignore the camera and enjoy yourselves. Caroline is very relaxed, she's mellow, it'll be fine. Caroline's program is literally literary on McMinnville Community Media, that's MCM, Comcast Xfinity Channel 11, and Frontier Fios Channel 29. Third Street Books is our festival bookseller, and after each workshop and reading, the speakers will be coming down to the book table to sign books. The woman who put together the broadside and coordinated that has also put together 3 lovely raffle baskets, and those raffle tickets, for a chance, those baskets are just $5 a piece, so stop by for those when you stop by for your broadside. There's an open mic at the end of the day, as you see on the schedule, and there's a sign up for the open mic at the registration table. We do have a 1-page limit, unless you use 6-point font and brought a magnifying glass, in which case your limit is not 1 page, but 1 line. And now, I'd like to introduce Keith Evers, who's going to introduce our morning keynote speaker. Keith is coming forward to introduce our keynote speaker, even as I speak now. He has close ties to McMinnville and to Terroir. In fact, he was in Barbara Drake's creative writing courses at Linfield College way more than 10 years ago. We Terroiristas are very grateful to have him join the committee this year. Thanks, Keith.
Good morning. I hope you've all found your coffee and tea. This is my 3rd year at Terroir. I've had to practice saying that. But it's my first time as part of the great group that puts this together. I've learned that there is a terror writing festival also going on in Tasmania. If that's what you were looking for, just raise your hand. So as a metaphor for Yamhill County's fruitful slopes and our quaternary volcanoes and the valley between, the word terroir really resonates with me. I live in West Lynn, but I grew up on a prune farm, about a 20-minute walk that direction. So this really is a homecoming for me. Today I work in educational technology, but I've always enjoyed writing. Why? Why is writing so important to me? Well, I'm lucky enough to have in this room 3 people who really influenced me as a writer. One was my high school English teacher, Jan Smith. Hi, Jan. It was her job to teach us sentence diagramming. And Jan, 2 or 3% of us really enjoyed that. Next is Barbara Drake. She was our writing professor at Linfield College and also one of our presenters today. She used to bring us by the dozen out to her farm in Yam Hill, where we wrote about goats and wine grapes. Thank you. The third person is our keynote speaker. In 1989, an early project of the Yamhill County Arts Alliance was a writing contest for McMinnville High School students. Thanks to the support of Jan Smith, I was one of 6 winning students, and our prize was a 2-day writing workshop at the Sylvia Beach Hotel in Newport. 21 rooms, named and decorated after famous writers, a library with comfortable chairs overlooking the ocean, and all-you-can-drink coffee and tea. So at 16, we'd never been trusted with that before, so we filled and refilled our cups. And then we gathered in the reading room, noisy and artistic teenagers, each of us cultivating a comedy bit and a broken heart. Kim Stafford was our writing workshop leader. He was a young guy, but he had the calm and patience of an older man, tuned in and curious. I remember he had sideburns, and then he spoke very softly. Have you ever spoke too loudly, and then someone else kind of whispers back, and then you whisper from that point onward? He sort of did that to all of us. We whispered for 2 days straight. Kim gave us space and topics to write about. He shared some of his own poetry and poems he admired or wished to teach us something. And when it was time for us to read our winning entries, Kim taught me a great skill. In his book, The Muses Among Us, Eloquent Listening and Other Pleasures of the Writer's Craft, Kim Stafford writes of cultivating his ear for the seemingly trivial language around him, of keeping his notebook handy and his spirit tuned to the incidental, sincere, and off the cuff. He writes, "Maybe I am this gatherer of treasure, shepherding words, phrases, and texts of character, orphaned by the world's attention to money and fame." The active listening he demonstrated that weekend at the coast was truly selfless, and it couldn't have been easy. These were teenager poems. I remember enough about my own submission, a sonnet about a time-traveling scientist, that I can only guess that Mr. Stafford crossed some significant hurdles to find something nice and encouraging to say about it. But he did. He did enough that I left the workshop believing that creative writing would always be part of my life. And it has. For that, I thank my wonderful teachers and Oregon's Poet Laureate. The Poet Laureate program is a collaborative project of the state's 5 statewide cultural partners: Oregon Arts Commission, Oregon Heritage Commission, Oregon Historical Society, Oregon Humanities, and the State Historic Preservation Office. The program is funded by the Oregon Cultural Trust and managed by Oregon Humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kim Stafford.
I want to hear that sonnet. Wow, thank you for those words. Sideburns. Forgot that. Wow, what a privilege to be 10 years into a great thing and full house. And I'm so struck as I was listening to, what was it? Mark Twain said the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. And I'm just thinking the difference between terroir and terror. It's one letter. The finer points are very important. I've reached the land of rain and mud, where flowers and trees so early bud. I've reached the land, oh blessed day, for in Oregon it rains always. Oh, Oregon, wet Oregon, as through the rain and mud I run. I look above, behind, around, I watch the rain soak in the ground. Watch it rain and watch it pour, and wish it wouldn't rain anymore. A sweet perfume is on the breeze. It comes from fir and older trees, and all the flowers that bud and blow, and all the leaves that green and grow. Oh, Oregon girls, wet Oregon girls, with flashing eyes and soggy curls, they'll sing and dance both night and day, till some web-footer comes their way. They'll meet you at the kitchen door, saying, wipe your feet or come no more. So this is an old Oregon song written by the greatest writer of all, Anonymous. Anonymous has written this, gifted us with such wonderful works. And, you know, it does an interesting thing. It complains and then it celebrates. Complains and then it celebrates. And I was just realizing the first two rhymes, mud, bud. They're connected. They're connected. They need each other. Rains always, blessed day. Rains always, blessed day. Joy has to rhyme with hardship. Joy has to rhyme with hardship. And we have a great abundance of hardship in the world right now. And the writer's work is to do that second part. Find something living, something budding, something beginning, something singing. So that's our work. My mom, her favorite quote of Wendell Berry's was, "Be joyful, though you have considered the facts." And again, the news is assaulting us with hard facts just constantly. And so to be joyful is an act of creation, an act of courage, an act of generosity. And it's what we must do. I've been telling my students that, you know, they do a piece of writing and then they want me to tell them what to do with what they've written. And I have this great cop-out that I love. You need to write part two. Write part two. That's my favorite writing problem. Like, what's the part you haven't said yet? What's the part that completes what you started? What's the other side, the other way to see things? I'm thinking about Terroir. The other day, I was struck by this one phrase that writers, actually everybody uses. And then out of nowhere, I had this idea. How does that work? Out of nowhere. I mean, that is delicious. I remember teaching 4th grade one time, and I gave some writing prompt, and a little guy raised his hand and he said, "Can we use our imaginations?" It just broke my heart. I thought, this is the land of the free. You have to have permission. But, it turns out the imagination it's a magical thing we need to keep remembering, recovering, restoring. And out of nowhere, we're in that time of year that a friend of mine calls the Oregon Symphony. When everything just comes bursting out, the wild cherries are just scattering blessings. And, the maple trees are hanging their little tassels down, and, everything's just bursting. The Oregon Symphony. Is that coming out of nowhere? No, actually, it's coming from what I think of as an old beginning. Not a new beginning, an old beginning. And the old beginning is something rooted, something that's really got its feet down at its sources, deep in the earth, in the jury soil, in that volcanic aftermath, and that clay broken down by acid, that sort of terrible things that happen to make the soil, out of which something comes as if from nowhere. There it goes. So what I want to do in my time with you is pose a question and then read a poem. This is, I kind of got this idea from Carol Bly. You know, her definition of an essay was an idea, a story, and lots of sensuous detail, in no particular order. I really love that. So an idea, a story, lots of sensuous detail. And I heard this quoted by a teacher who said, yeah, Carol Bly said there are 4 elements to an essay: an idea, a story, lots of sensuous detail, and then it asks a question and then answers it. So the next time I saw Carol Bly, I said, Carol, I've heard this 4th part. She said, oh, that's what the teacher wants the students to do. Answer the question. You know, thesis statement, response. She said, what I would do is I'd pose a question, but instead of answering it, I'd tell a story. What are we going to do with our broken country? One time I was up in the Dalles. See how that works? Once you say one time, you're sort of off the hook to be the expert on the answer. And you are being accompanied by people who are helplessly eager for a story. One time, a few days after the election, I was up in the Dalles, and I was pleading with people in the workshop for a consoling story. And one of them said, oh, I have a story. Yeah, I was at Fred Meyer's. I had my shopping cart, and I got all my hippie foods in there. You know, I had my almond milk and my granola. And then I wandered out in the garden section, and Buddha was on sale. There was a sitting Buddha on sale. And so I managed to get Buddha in my cart, and I was checking out, and there was this old cowboy in line behind me, tall, skinny guy. And he was looking at me. He was looking at my hippie outfit and stuff in my cart and everything. And then he looked at the Buddha. And he just had this look of disdain on his face. And finally he couldn't stand it. And he said, what in the hell is that? And I said, oh, sir, it's a man who was so troubled by the suffering of the world, he sat under a tree for a long time to try to figure out how we could be more kind to each other. There was a long pause. And the cowboy said, that's good. I have a tree like that out at my place. When I was a kid, I used to climb it. I could see over the whole world. Now I can't even get my grandkids to climb it. They're just like this all the time. But you could come out. I'd get a couple chairs. We could sit under that tree, and you would not believe when the sun starts going down, the colors that come up out of the earth. You think they're coming down from the sky, but they're just coming up from the earth. And when it gets dark, I've got a telescope. We could look through the telescope. And she said, I realized in that moment, I would do anything for this man. And I believe he would do anything for me. So we pose a question, we tell a story, and you know, the world is constantly gifting us with stories. I was just in Cottage Grove a few days ago, and I heard the story that started, yeah, I got a call from our Buddhist center. It's a little flat-top house there. There was a naked man meditating on the roof, and they asked me to come out and bring a ladder. Does it get better than this? Okay, so pose a question, read a poem. How do my relations teach me? How do my relations teach me? I told some of you, I think at the library, the story of the anthropologist who went to the Pitt River people. Did I tell that story at the library?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and you know, he asked the Pitt River people, this was back around 1900, for their whole language. He just wanted the whole language, so he just spent months writing down all the words. And then finally there was one other word he needed. What do you call white people? People like me. And the elders were very embarrassed. Finally, one of them said a very long word, which means those who do not stop to make relation. those who do not stop to make relation. And I think of a writer as someone who stops to make relation with a place, with the history of a place, the creatures of a place, the needs of a place, with the stories inside, the old myths, the stars. Make relation. Barry Lopez says all stories are about relation. Who I am to who you are. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about our relation. Who I am to who I used to be. We call that memoir. Memoir. Who I am to who I want to be. Who I am to the place I live. So all about relationship. So I told that story down in Benton Community College, just off this 4-city, 5-day tour. And someone there said, oh, do you know the Swahili word for European? Mzungu. It means one who wanders around. Or one who spins around and grows dizzy. And the possessive form means one who acts rich. I love that. Not necessarily is rich. One who acts rich, Mzungu. So to not be Mzungu, I have written this poem, All My Relations. I want to thank all my relations for this chance to be on earth in her time of flourishing. I want to thank the first people of this place to honor their sovereignty in long and continuing relation, still teaching us how we might be together here. I want to thank my mother and father, moon and sun, for setting me forth before their own passing on. I want to thank my grandmother who listened to me so eloquently I learned to listen to my own heart and mind to find stories there. I want to thank my family and friends and all citizens and travelers who work and study for deeper kinship in this place, with one another and with all creatures, one earth, visible, palpable, fragile, intricate, resonant, in need of our better stories. I want to thank you who have gathered here to receive what I have carried in hopes that something I have may meet something you need, and all our relations may be strengthened for this life we live together. Amen. Quiero agradecer a todas mis relaciones por esta oportunidad de estar en la tierra en su época de florecimiento. So, next question. How might a creature speak? You know, part of our work is to speak for those who can't speak, either human or otherwise. And for this, I have to go way, way back to Old English. In my 20s, I studied Old English because of poems like this one by, remember the greatest poet of all time? Anonymous. So this is around 800, where this creature is speaking in the first person. Silent is my shirt when I walk the earth or dwell in town or stir the waters. Sometimes my shining lifts me high over the houses of heroes. And this high air and the power of the sky bear me far above the human. Then my beauties sound in song. Sing aloud with a clear tune. Then I do not rest on land or water, a traveling ghost. So my teachers wanted me to solve the riddle, figure out what creature it is, put the creature's name into the title of the poem, and just dust off my hand and say, take care of that. It's called criticism. But I felt that although the critics say this is a whistling swan, you know, that its music is by flying, not by its voice, sound it makes. It's actually a riddle about being a human being, a traveling spirit, one whose beauties lift. So let me read it again, and then I'll read it in Old English. So don't think of this as a whistling swan, but think of this as your soul. Silent is my shirt when I walk the earth or dwell in town or stir the waters. Sometimes my shining lifts me high over the houses of heroes. And this high air and the power of the sky bear me far above the human. Then my beauties sound in song. Sing aloud with a clear tune. Then I do not rest on land or water, a traveling ghost. Verende Gast, a traveling spirit. Orego means swiga von ich rusen treda, o the which Buddha o the wado drefa. Wilo make a heva over halada bicht. Hier stamina on theos thea lift, on mich ton wieder wolkna strengu over folk bireth. Fratwa mina swogat luda on swinsia torta singa. Donitje tengene beom floda und foldan ferenda gast. Oh, they knew how to have fun. Okay, so this leads me to make a riddle, and I'm going to give you some optional homework, okay? Optional homework. I'm really into optional homework. Write some riddles. Think of a creature precious to you, and speak in that creature's voice. And as you do so, just watch how you make relation with that creature, how you find affinity between that creature's suffering and aspiration and your own. So here's a riddle. I am your favorite. I leave you again and again. The sky loves me, lets me go to you for a time, then return home. You forsake many, but not me. Treasured above gold, house, or kin. Them you love, me you need. Since our last time, I've been to Timbuktu, Everest, Tierra del Fuego, and through the forest of the wheat stalks where mice whispered me. I carry your words to touch others, but like mist, words disappear while I continue on. You the human, me the wild, we met, dwelt, spoke. Okay. I guess I won't do the quiz right now. Okay, another question. What have I learned from a glance? You know, so much of being in the world is you just pick up a signal. You know, you see an old friend and you know something's happening with them by the way they carry themselves. I was listening to Donald Murray, a writer from Boston. He said, he teaches, or he taught at a university, and he said, when he walked down the hall, he could tell which of his colleagues were writing by the way they carried themselves. Those who were writing had a certain buoyancy, a certain lift. So I met a toad. It was 4 in the morning, it was raining. We were in Maine. The toad didn't know it was in Maine, but I was in Maine. And I just had to write this poem about the joy of the toad. For the toad by the kitchen step, 4 a.m. at the craft school. Rain has come and life is grand. Everywhere in the dark forest, in moss along my favorite path, and in my den in duff, a hum of well-being. Listen, hear the tramp of the busy humans, percussive steps on bedrock, on the wood stair and earth, all that resonant hum of tinkering as they chatter and blur. How they long to make a jewel like me. My pearled belly, magnificent articulation of my toes, the glory of my pebbled back, in colors subtle beyond imagining. These humans, towering kin intent on fashioning their poor equivalent of what a tree does, simply standing up, or rain falling to perfectly dimple the sea, or a toad, content in Buddha pose. They'll make me die with laughing, chanting every night. So, optional homework, speak in the voice of a creature, see what happens. Okay, optional homework. Think of someone in your life who needs a poem. and then either find or write a poem for that person. I was talking with someone before about the distinction between a great poem and an important poem. Great poems tend to have been written by people who are dead. They get in thick books, and then high school students are forced to analyze them. You know, that's a great poem. There are many great poems that I love, but I want to make a plea for the important poem, which is something created by an ordinary person as a gift for a place, for a person, for a cause. And, you know, it has this little job to do. And I'll give you one example. I was at the Queen of Peace School in Salem. And I was in the 4th grade, and I told the students, think of someone in your life who needs a poem, and write a poem for that person. And a little guy named Max wrote this poem for his friend James. So the poem is called James. There are 7 continents. There are 7 oceans to cross. There are 192 countries. There are 50 states. There are 7 billion humans. And I met you. Important poem. Simple means great effect. You know, this goes with what my father's poetry teacher, Paul Engel, 1952, University of Iowa, said a very important thing. He said the most important poetry will occur at the intersection of the most ordinary experience and the most unusual imagination. So we start where we are, in ordinary experience, and we bring to that the fire of our imagination, our wondering. What is, go ahead, just write Mary Oliver's optional homework for us, or non-optional. Notice, be astonished, tell about it. Is that right? Does that sound right? Yeah. Notice something, be astonished. That's where the imagination begins to sizzle in the way we see. So notice something, be astonished, tell about it. So the writing is reportage. You know, you're not getting it all fancy with language. You are having incandescent experience by looking closely, by the magnification of close attention. And you know, when I was in that 4th grade, I told them a story about when I was 4 years old. I went to my mom and I said, Mama, my nose feels kind of funny. She said, well, we better take you to the doctor. You know? So we went to the doctor, and he had the special flashlight, and he looked up in there, and he reached in with some special tweezers, and he pulled out a pussy willow. I just remember it felt so good. So I was telling the story to the kids. They were completely mystified. Not a single kid knew what a pussy was. Poets, we have work to do. We have work to do. So I mailed them some pussy willows. You know, and I said, this is the smallest kitten you will ever meet. Grab it. You know, don't put it in your nose. Right? So because of that encounter, I made a list, and your optional homework is to make your own list and then write a poem cycle about the things on your list. And these were the benign beings when I was short and saw things close up. So Pussy Willow, once I started this list, I just turned into a little kid again. Honeysuckle nectar. You know, you pull out the stamen, all that little bead of nectar. A honeybee on clover, that's just kind of, the bee is so heavy, it's a clover swaying. The tongue of a butterfly, the spiral unfurling. I mean, we're talking about miracles here. These are miracles that are real. The ladybug that climbs up onto your fingertip and then circles around and then click, and there it goes. That's magic. The ladybug. The snail eyes extending. That is a miracle. A cellbug roly-poly, you know, hiding its writhing legs in a little carapace. Garter snake wrapped around your wrist. You pick up a salamander, and often it, you know, gives you a high five. Pollywog in a dripping hand, swirling around before you put it back. The love bite of a snapdragon? Oh my God, does it get better than that? It's like, check this out. Snap. Grass in your praying hands whistling. I mean, these are the basic skill set of childhood. A woolly bear. A woolly bear. I mean, just the whole concept of a woolly bear rolling up in your hand. The blur of a hummingbird. The blur. You know, if there weren't hummingbirds and then one showed up, we would realize this is as good as it gets. You know, and there it is, and yet it's fragile. And we need to tell its story. You know, the nature is crying out to us. Tell our story. There's a story a Mexican writer told me, and she said, you know, every writer in Mexico knows this story. And it sounds like a joke, the way it starts. So the ship is sinking, and on board there's one life jacket, and there's a priest, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, and a poet. And so the poet goes up to the prow of the ship, it's already listing a little bit, and just looks up at the sky and thinks, I've had such a beautiful life. I've been singing all my life the praises of the world. It's been good. Take me. You know, and then the writer turns around, and the others that have been conferring back there, they're holding out the life jacket. And they say, this is for you. And the writer says, no. I mean, when a baby is born, if the doctor's not there, how would we be okay? And the teacher, you know, takes care of our young people, helps them grow and be wise. And the priest, when our spirits falter, you help to raise us up. And even the lawyer, when we can't agree, you help us find a way. And they hold out the life jacket and they say, but you will tell our story. You will tell our story. So that's our job, to tell our story. Okay, so back to these questions. Oh my gosh. This is kind of rugged. Okay, I'm going to read a rugged poem, but it has a turn. You know, one time in class we were talking about a student's poem and just trying to figure out, like, there's something else it needed, what was it? And one of my students said, well, it doesn't have a turn. I said, what's a turn? My student said, you don't know what a turn is? Every poem, you know, like that song I started with. Oh God, the rain is horrible. A sweet perfume is on, you know, and then it starts celebrating. There's a turn. This is an essential element in a poem as it is in a life. A turn. And so this poem has a turn, and I think you'll hear when it happens. So it has two parts. And the first half comes from another optional homework assignment that I want to give you. A nonfiction poem. A nonfiction poem where you start with data. You start with a quote from someone, or you start with some facts, or you start with something that happened. And, you know, my father's old writing assignment, tell what happened and then tell what might have happened. Tell what you said and then say what you might have said. You know, the writer gets to revise the life. So the first part is from a devastating article in The Guardian, just listing how birds die. So part one is, this is called Wild Birds Teach Us. Part one, how birds die. Get caught by a kitty cat, 2.4 billion. Collateral damage of industry, 700 million. Hit a window, 600 million. Hit by a car, 214 million. Get poisoned, 72 million. Hit a power line, 25 million. Get electrocuted, 5 million. Hit a turbine, 234,000. Are you getting depressed yet? Get blinded by city lights and stray. Search in vain for Starlight's guide. Get out of sync with climate change. Depart too late, arrive too early. Land in a lake of arsenic. Get your wings fouled in oil. Eat plastic, eat foil. Eat lead shot, and have a seizure. Eat poisoned insects and carry their doom. Lose your acre of breeding ground and so circle the parking lot that used to be a marsh. Circle and circle, cry and cry. Be a snowy owl in the era of Harry Potter, caged by a reader, expected to prophesy. Be the wild pet of 7 billion mammals with hands. Be the last of your kind, singing and singing. Part 2. How birds live. Fence wire, a throne for singing, singing. Thorns in the blackberry thicket, jewels of safety. A vacant lot rife with a chance mix. Heaven. Wing bars of crimson, mustard, moss, kinfolk. A fat worm, a ripe seed, a caught beetle, enough. Twig feet on a twig after 1,000 miles. Rest. Bill tucked under a wing, spiral home. Cast off thread and thistledown, snug nest. A silence into which to put a few water notes, duet. Breeding season, egg season, fledgling season, destiny. Wings in the mist, riding, gliding, no trace. Heart surge, song rising from inside, beauty's custodian. A short, intense, breathless life, grace. So, one question, and this goes to optional homework again, is how can you recover the lost good thing? The lost good thing. I heard this from a writer in Kansas, Tom Averill. His dad was a psychiatrist who worked at the Miniature Clinic after World War II with what they then called shell-shocked veterans. And Dr. Averill did 2 things. One was he would read a novel with his patient, and then they'd talk about what the characters did and what they might have done. What they might have done differently. So it was a way at a certain safe distance to talk about freedom. You have options in life, you get to decide. And then the second thing he would do, he'd say, tell me about the lost good thing. The thing that was so beautiful in your life. Maybe it was a summer. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was a feeling about yourself, a feeling about the world. Maybe there was a particular place that was so good and beautiful and made you feel at home. And then it was lost. It died. It was destroyed. You lost it out of your soul. Tell me about it. Tell me. Tell it back into being. So to tell the lost good thing back into being. So I want to read a chapter from this book about my brother Brett, who died a year before that workshop at Sylvia Beach. And this is, I just decided I wanted to reach back past my brother's day of death in November of 1988 to the glory of his life. It's like there was this iron door of tragedy at the end, but I wanted to reach through that door and get back to the good thing. So this was one of the good things when we were Boy Scouts and wild and rebellious. It's called crevasse. When we were Boy Scouts, my brother and I were among the older boys with special dispensation to stray. We were the ones who went ahead along the trail and with practiced knuckle and palm printed bear tracks across the path. Dawdled until the rest of the troop caught up, and they asked our scoutmaster about them and savored his extended discussion of safety, the buddy system, and personal hunting exploits. We were the ones who set up distractions for our scoutmaster so the other boys could slip stones into his pack, one at each stop for a rest, to slow him down, give us all reprieve from forced march, frequent rests, and the pleasure of his volcanic laugh when he opened his pack in camp. I remember him shouting, "I'm not that old after all!" We were the ones who almost managed to launch the smallest boy among us into flight, tied to a 20-foot pine sapling bent to earth. Boy Scouts are... In camp, our favorite place of all, Jefferson Meadows. High in the Cascades, we ate from boxes of primitive Bernard's dehydrated food wrapped in paperback oil, swam naked in the lake, waged a losing battle against clouds of mosquitoes, practiced knot work, held compass contests, performed Morse code, mirror flashing, created first aid plans for the macabre scenarios invented by our scoutmaster. Remember, so fellas, what if someone like fell off a stone and their thigh bone was thrust up into their stomach? What would you do? Basically he was saying, don't get in a high place. The lesson, the hidden lesson was in there. One morning, my brother and I got to looking up the mountain where it rose abruptly from the meadows surrounding our camp. What was it like up there? How high could you go? What dangers and wonders lurked far above the trail? Somehow, we convinced our scoutmaster, this is grounds for liability, sure, a benign miniature Marine, to let us find out, just the two of us, if we promised to rope up and proceed with care. We're about 15, so it seems fantastic now that he gave permission. We knew nothing. We scrambled up a forested ridge to where the trees were twisted by wind and shattered by avalanche, and we stepped out onto the glacier. We donned the flimsy snow goggles we had made with foil from the food packets, with slits cut Eskimo style to block the splendor of the sun on ice. And we had a 10-foot length of manila line tied with a bowline knot around my brother's waist and a matching bowline around mine. I think we'd watched some show where, the mountaineers roped up. So I can make a bowline knot, we're all set. My brother went first. We had discussed the danger of the hidden crevasses, fueled by a rumor we had heard from some nature show the other boys had watched. So basically our preparation was rumor. My brother took a boulder about the size of his head and flung it violently onto the glacier before him. When no crevasse appeared, he stepped forward, picked up the stone, and flung it down again, like a cartoon figure, repetitive. I brought up the rear, and thus we made our halting Sisyphean way across the white, blank steep. We climbed until we could no longer see the camp or the ant boys below. We climbed until we found ribbons of ice and a hue of blue we had never seen. The air was ethereal. We had returned to some primitive form of boy, unencumbered by effort beyond the physical, pleasure in seeing, in being, in ascending as two in one. There was a kind of light up there I have not seen anywhere else. The light was so clear that the image of my brother, stepping doggedly ahead of me, could not be tarnished by time. It was a visual effect that my field guide to the weather described as not rare, but rarely seen. We climbed until my brother's arms began to shake, lifting the stone. He looked back at me, the stone in his gloved hands. I remember teetering on the brilliant slope, our bodies steaming, my brother's face shining with sweat and a fire from within. Senor, he said. We called each other Senor. Senor. Not a question, a connection. The rope lay still on the snow between us. For a few moments we stood, not speaking, but gazing. Not asking, but feeling, being, brimming. Then we retraced our safe steps, following our tracks across the boundary of heaven to earth, scrambled down the ridge of twisted trees, and stumbled at dusk into camp for a welcoming bowl of Bernard's minestrone and blackened biscuits on us. I have thought often of that venture. Had the crevasse opened, we would both be gone. One in a sudden slide and shout, and the other, me, after a brief hesitation before the rope jerked taut. I see us there, two specks above the splendid glare of white, hopeful, breathless, joined in life or doom as one. My brother, though God, still leads me across that steep. So you get back the good thing. Now there it is, in words, in airy nothing. And yet it's there in a form that can console you and can be given to another. Okay, I want to read just a few poems from this book that is not even out yet. It comes out on Shakespeare's birthday next week. And this one, I guess, would start with the question, how do I learn from the wild? How do I learn from the wild? It's called How to Sleep Cold in North County. Fish trap, right? How many people have been in a fish trap? So you go way out to Northeast Oregon, fish trap in Wallowa County, and then you go farther to the outpost. And we stayed at Billy Meadows for a week, and we sat under the pine trees and wrote. And it had been a while since I was a Boy Scout, and so I didn't pack very well. I thought, well, hey, it's summer, can't get that cold. How to sleep cold in North County. You didn't bring the bedding that you need. Last night's thunder cleared the sky. Tonight the stars could cut your tent's thin skin to tatters, and the moon bullies up through the pines. Out beyond the meadow, elk whistle and stamp, you settle in wearing all you've got. It's not a sleeping bag tonight, but a thin cocoon for metamorphosis. Make a snout, a breathing hole, and burrow in, writhing to survive. In darkness, cold is the blunt force, stretching time to an elastic misery that gathers all you ever did wrong. That tunnels through your geologic story, and you a yeasty bit in the great extinction. Then morning comes, a sleepy robin ladles out forgiveness, light seeps in, rise poor pilgrim, and bless the sun. Did you hear the turn there? Then morning comes, I can't emphasize enough this notion of starting with the world as it is in all its hardship and trouble, and then doing the alchemy of poetry, of imagination, of song, and finding some sustaining beauty in that. We have a phrase now, speak beauty to power. Speak beauty to power. This is a phrase from Randy Gregg, architect in Portland, and the Portland City Council had every Wednesday at 9:30, they have 15-minute slots for citizen testimony. And usually it's people shouting at the city council, basically just, complaining, giving them all kinds of grief. And we thought, well, what if a poet signed up? What if a musician signed up and sang a song to the council as testimony? Speak beauty to power. Okay, so here's a poem responding to the question, how shall we find our way? How shall we find our way? It's called Beside the Road While Our Nation is at War. In our son's young hand, borrowed from the ground in California, 5 acorns listen and roll. Dad, these could be bullets. Will you help me make a gun? His eyes look up into mine. Or, Dad, they could be magic seeds. Will you help me make a bag with a hole so they drop along the path and grow? I take his hand in mine. Little friend, we must decide. So, in a way that's a nonfiction poem. This little encounter happens and you quote verbatim. Let's see what you have. Okay, I think I want to read from this little book again. Earth Verse. I taught a class at the Haystack School of Craft back in Maine. And we wrote Earth Verse. And I think I'll pause actually and see if there are some questions. I have one more poem I want to read you, but any questions? I think we're going till about 10:10, is that right? Does that make, yeah, okay. So, as one of my professors would say, I see some of my friends in the audience who know the areas in which I'm weak. I mean, it's a very difficult question. So, any questions? Please.
I'm not even really sure how to phrase this, but were you aware, as you were growing up, that you had sort of a special permission in your household to think this way?
Let's rephrase that. Were you troubled? Yes, I was troubled. Like the Boy Scouts, when we'd go somewhere, we'd stop to take a break, our scoutmaster would get out of the car. Where's Stafford? Because I would just be, there I go. I told my mom when I was 4 or 5 years old, I'm going outside to get the nice feel of the night. I think I was called out. I was called forth. And a very mysterious thing, I don't know what to make of this. My poetry teacher, Ralph Salisbury, who's gone now, he told me something about 15 years after my dad died. He said, Kim, there's something I've been thinking about telling you, but I didn't know if I should. And I said, well, Ralph, fire away. What do you got? He said, well, one time your dad and I went to a conference, and we were driving back at night, and we got talking about our children. And your father said the strangest thing. He said, I love all my children dearly, but there is one who is myself. And that's Kate. I said, Ralph, I see why you hesitated. That is heavy, man. So I don't know what that means, I was the Indian of the family. There's a story about my dad that when he was about 10, he showed up at a gas station at the end of Hutchinson, Kansas, and he had this bow that he'd made out of a broom handle and some willow arrows, and the gas station attendant said, well, Billy, what you up to? I'm going to catch a rabbit. Well, Billy, you stop by and show me that rabbit. 45 minutes later. And the person who told me the story said, your dad was kind of an Indian. What does that mean? We're trying to be in relation to the place we live. So, yeah, I was a wild man. I climbed the water tower and, tried to break into church to play my clarinet for God and all kinds of stop, I just got to do it. Another question. Yes, please. Shout it out. Or no, here comes the power.
Well, you mentioned some of the high school poetry, having to figure out what the poets meant.
Yeah.
And I know I have put aside some books sometimes because I thought, I don't know what they're saying. It isn't my world. And yet I hear you in everything you say. I think, this is my world.
Yeah.
Do you write mysteriously? I love hearing what I hear because it's so real, but sometimes I don't think poetry is that.
Yeah, I'm going to get to meet a guy next week. He goes by Manny the Tall Cuban. He lives in Astoria, and he has a big bridge club, and he's by his email, a really interesting guy. So I sent him a poem, and he wrote back. I don't think he intended to insult me, but he said, maybe professors could understand this poem, but I can't. And he went on about how, ordinary people like me, we just want to talk English. We don't want all this extra stuff. So, I was despairing. And so I did the completely futile effort of trying to explain the poem. But Manny wrote to his high school English teacher and got her to translate my poem into English. And the thing is, she had all kinds of metaphors, too. Till your heart feels like the 4th of July. And Manny said, oh, now I get it. I think there's a spectrum between the obvious and the esoteric and impenetrable. And we're always trying to find, how can I convey the complex beauty of existence and the ordinary power of things that are easily seen. Am I responding to your question? I feel like I'm always trying to find that point. I want to push toward the true complexity of life on earth. But I want to do it in such a way, as my father said, when you extend a poem to a reader, it's like a cup of hot coffee, and it's polite to extend the handle to the, So you want to extend the handle of your poem. You want to have something recognizable, familiar, and then let it go. I hope I'm responding. And for me, what I like about that is when I'm writing every morning, daily writing practice, optional homework, do it for 30 days. I start with something like that. Because that's what the world presents me. Oh, there was that toad. What was it about that toad? A toad. Oh yeah, just the Buddha pose. Oh yeah, as you start looking at the ordinary thing, it becomes less ordinary. One more question?
You may have almost answered my question, but when you start out to write a poem, you start out with a road map to get from here to there, or you just step out the door?
Yeah, do you start with a road map or you just step out the door? I don't know if this is useful, but there is often a phrase that I have some instinctive loyalty to. You know, there's something there. There's a nut inside that kernel. And so this is very odd probably. I read the title first. And I sort of know where I'm going, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. You know, this is something sacred that I want to honor. So I said one more question, but there's a very insistent person. Belt it out.
Yeah, I'm a teacher, and I know that there's a need for youth to have short, you know, wonderful pieces. Are you interested in writing for YA in a small poetry form for the youth needs? Because that's what our and we need them for boys. We need to get those boys reading and thinking about things that they love, and everything I heard was fabulous that they need to know.
Are you giving me optional homework? Maybe it's not optional.
I give all my kids, all my boys, homework through the summer because it's not optional.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's all take that on. Let's write from the most precious, the lost good things, the most resonant stories we have for readers who don't yet know they love poetry or need poetry. Is that? Yeah. So yeah, especially boys.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end with a poem, if I may, and then we'll mill around a little bit. So I had the privilege to read with my counterpart, Claudia Castro-Luna, who's the Poet Laureate of Washington State. She's from El Salvador, and very winsome person. And she told about going home to Salvador to visit her father, who's not in good health, and it was dangerous to go. And you know, as she visited her father, as she was driving back to the airport, it was a dangerous drive. She didn't know she'd make it. There were a lot of things she saw that were destroyed. And then she came into this ravine, this green ravine filled with butterflies and flowers, and that somehow the war had missed. And there was a woman at the turn of the road there, sitting, holding her daughter, selling little jars of honey. And so she bought a jar of honey, and everything was great until she got to Houston, and then the customs agent. So I decided, in the spirit of my predecessor, Elizabeth Woody, the 8th Poet Laureate, she said in her last reading, the more I do poetry, the less it's about what the poem is, and the more it's about who the poem serves. So this is a poem for the customs agent who seized Claudia's jar of honey from El Salvador. Para probar, she said. Taste it, let it sizzle on your tongue. Take it home, smuggled in your dark pocket, and with a spoon drip to the tongues of your children slow sips of joy, so they may know how sweet my country once was, in spite of war and sorrow. Tell them how the ravine of flowers the soldiers missed, the bees found, humming and humming, zumbado, zumbado. Remind them how a mother could sit by the road with her daughter in her arms and a few jars of true gold, how my coins in her brown hand meant enough this day, even though her man was gone, even though your law would take this elixir from me, even though there will always be war, but always flowers, bees, mothers, and your children. And if you have no children, if you do not wish to think of war or my country, or the woman by the road, still I beg you, taste this honey. Let the sticky song of 1,000 flowers give your body the oldest, deepest pleasure. Do not lose your chance to know how sweet my country once was, in spite of war and sorrow, a pesar de la guerra y el